Yo, sup? So first off, I want to apologize for this video being late. I um, was in St. Louis this past weekend, which is like 7 hours from where I'm from in Michigan, um, for the Midwestern Queer Indigenous People of Color Conference. And Monday, I was just recovering from this weekend. So in light of that, that's actually what I'm going to be talking about this video, and a lot happened. So this is going to be rather long, which I apologize for. I'll be like as condensed about it as possible. So yeah, this weekend I went to the Midwest Queer Indigenous People of Color Conference, and it was one of the absolute most amazing experiences I have ever had. Yeah, so it was the conference was held at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, on the Danforth campus, I think it's called. And basically how the conference went was there was a keynote speaker whose name was Holiday Simmons, and he talked about sustainable collective liberation and what that looked like. And then after that, there were workshops. There were 3 sessions of workshops that you could go to, and then there were gender and sexuality caucuses. So the first day, the conference, there were like a slew of different workshops. There was like everything from talking about like fragile masculinity to dating the oppressor to there was a music workshop where you would create music. It was called Music is Healing. There was a workshop where you created an installation art piece. There were workshops about being poly and POC. There were workshops of being asexual and a person of color. There were a lot of absolutely amazing workshops. I went with a group of about 8 people, and we all went to different workshops throughout the day. So we would come back and like tell each other what happened in the workshops that we went to. And then on Sunday there were gender and sexuality caucuses. So like you could go to trans-masculine, trans-feminine, woman, man, non-binary, etc., etc. And you just kind of sit, and the discussion would go wherever it went. I went to the trans-masculine caucus, and we talked about like dating as a trans-masculine person. We talked about like what masculinity looks like to us and how we navigate that, how we navigate like not taking on the toxic masculine role. But yeah, so like one of the most beautiful things that I found about this conference, because there was another conference back in February called the Midwest Bisexual, Lesbian, Gay, Transgender Ally College Conference, MumbleTAC, that I also went to. Excuse me. But it was a lot different from this conference in that, one, it was predominantly white. It was a lot larger, and excuse me. It was predominantly white. It was a lot larger, and a lot of the workshops, this may because of the size of the conference, but a lot of the workshops were really like beginner level. Whereas this and it was a lot more lecture based. Whereas this workshop was this conference was a lot more intimate because there were like 130, 200 people there. And all the workshops were like discussion based. They're really interactive. So you didn't sit there and have someone talk to you about fragile masculinity. You had a discussion in a circle about fragile masculinity, and you sat down in a room of people and you had a discussion about what it's like to be poly and a person of color. So, excuse me, or non-monogamous and a person of color. So it was really nice in that way. The intimacy was a good thing, because it just seemed to be all the actions seemed to be a lot more combined with like compassion and genuine care. So like the people that were there that lived in St. Louis, they told you where to go eat for cheap, and everyone was like willing and ready to like make friends with you. And not even just that, it was almost like you'd meet these people and it was almost like you already knew each other, and you'd sit down and you'd have a conversation and you'd laugh, and it was a beautiful experience, because I've literally never been in a place where there are that many people like me. Like either I'm in a space where everyone's black, or I'm in a space where everyone's queer. There's never a space where everyone is both a person of color and queer. And I don't mean just black, which is another good thing about the conference. It was predominantly black, but it wasn't overwhelmingly black. And when topics were discussed, it wasn't just discussed from a black lens. It was like the floor was open for all people of color to speak and talk about their experiences with different topics. And I keep talking about specifically like masculinity so fragile and being poly and POC just because those were the workshops that in the installation art piece workshop, because those are the specific ones that I went to. So I can't really speak for what the other workshops were like. But from what I heard from my friends, like the other workshops were magnificent too. Like they were very intimate, they were very discussion based and interactive. Everyone seemed to have pulled a lot from this experience, from their experience in their workshop. Like the whole conference was fire. Like it was absolute flames. Like it was amazing, and it was just like the sort of community that was there. Like after the first set of workshops, everyone knew each other's names. And when you're walking down the street, if you ran into somebody, it wasn't just, you know, head nod or that weird constipated smile. It was like, I'd hear in the distance, Ezra, and then like you'd turn around and you go hug the person that you just met an hour ago, and you'd have a conversation, and they'd become a part of your group, and their group would become a part of your group, or you become a part of their group, and you guys would go on an adventure and do something. It was beautiful to have that sort of community. Because one of the problems that I have with navigating life, especially at a predominantly white university, whereas most of the things I do, the conferences that I go to, the talks that I go to are predominantly white or predominantly black and straight, like, I don't get the chance to meet people that I can interact with on a level that's more than, and I wish I knew how to explain it in another way that isn't just like the word intimate, because like that has like weird connotations. Like I know what I mean, I just mean like close and connected. There's also people that take that as like sexual or romantic. But when I say intimate, I mean like close, I mean connected, I mean familiar. I mean like, you know how you meet somebody, like you sit next to somebody on the bus and they act kind of weird, they say hi, how you doing, to make small talk, versus running into somebody like their cousin you've been hanging out with your whole life and you've known them forever and you have a whole conversation. Like, there's a difference between those sorts of interactions. And I got the interactions that I got at this conference because the people were one of the most beautiful things about this conference. Like, not just the fact that the workshops were fire and that everybody was on the same page when it came to this liberation and understanding, like, how being a person of color and queer and trans all played into, like, how you navigate the world and all those identities work together rather than just, like, intersecting at one point, you know. We're all on the same page with that, but everybody was just really compassionate, caring, empathetic, genuine. They were genuine. That's the word I've been looking for, and that's the thing that I don't get in most places that I go, and that was one of the most beautiful things about this conference, because we could have had the same general topics, but if the people weren't the same, this conference would not have been as amazing. And another one of the cool things was there was a post-Ferguson panel, and the people on the panel are a lot of the people that were on the front lines and in charge of organizing everything when it came to like protests and stuff down in Ferguson. And the thing about all of these people on the panel is that they're either woman, trans feminine, or queer, or all the above. So there was like not a single man on this panel. And when we talked to them, like the questions that the panelists were asked were like, what made you join the movement? What made you stick with it? What are struggles that you had within it? And if you've like quit the movement now, why did you quit or why are you taking a break? And they were all really honest about their experiences with the movement and how they felt about it. And that was also absolutely amazing to like hear what their experiences were and hear that their experiences mimic my experiences with trying to get into activism up in Michigan where I am. Because we face a lot of the same issues, whereas you have a lot of great ideas, but the men in the movement want to undermine you simply because you are queer, you are trans, you are assigned female at birth. And that masculinity makes them want to take leadership roles, but in reality, they don't know what they're doing, or when it comes down to it, they're hiding somewhere. There was one person on the panel that was saying, like, all like the males in the movement were trying to undermine them, and this person was assigned female at birth. And they say, like, a lot of the men, like the cis het dudes in the movement would try to undermine her, but then when it came down to it, when they were getting gas, they were asking for a gas mask. When it came down to it and they were on the front lines, they were hiding somewhere. They weren't up there. When they looked at the people that were on the front lines, they were all women or they were all queer. So, you know, hearing stuff like that, it was comforting for me in a sense. It made me feel like, okay, like I'm not just letting my people down by wanting to like take time for self-care. It's important to do those things. And they were also talking about like their journeys with self-care and mental issues like depression and things like that. And they were really honest about it too. They're like, I don't know how to self-care, but I'm taking little steps to figure it out. So like some of them were saying they started counseling, and then they gave like resources for people to find affordable counseling and healthcare down in St. Louis. And they're just like, yo, the plug, go to this place for and it was like, it was one of those things where every move that we made in this conference was geared towards self-care, supporting each other, supporting ourselves, and that kind of like collective ideal. Like we were all in this together, and we all wanted each other to be better. We all wanted each other to be okay and to keep pushing forward, not just in the fight as a movement, but in like our fights in our personal lives. Like everyone was committed to holding everyone else up and also showing each other how to hold ourselves up. And it was just, this is getting kind of lengthy. I don't know how long I've been talking, but I could go on forever about how amazing this conference was. So again, it was called the Midwestern Queer Indigenous People of Color Conference. Look it up. There's like a hashtag. It's like hashtag QIPOCC16. If you want to know more about it. Also, if you're friends with me on Facebook, I have like an article about it that was written, and it was just an amazing experience. So if you're in the area and you can go next year, I highly recommend it. Like registration was only $10, and I think it was $5 if you pre-registered, and then $10 if you came the day of and registered. But it was an absolutely amazing experience. Like it was refreshing. It was revitalizing. Like I feel it was encouraging for me, not just to keep going as an activist, but to keep going as a person, to keep going as a queer person, a trans person, a poly person. Like it was really encouraging to see so many other people like me. Like even when I was in the poly POC workshop, most of the people in there, this was the first time that they had seen other poly people of color. And it was just really encouraging to see that there are other people like me that are also encouraged, that are staying strong, that are moving forward, that are just living their lives as themselves and not worried about what the system thinks of them, They're like, fuck the system, I'm gonna live the way that I live regardless, excuse my French. But yeah, so that was a little tidbit of my experience at the Queer Indigenous People of Color Conference. If you have any more questions about it, because there's so much more that I could talk about, because there are more workshops than just what I mentioned here. If you have more questions about it or you want to talk more about it, I'm going to put my contact info in the description. Hit me up. If you watched this whole thing, thank you. I know it was a lot, but I hope it was interesting to some extent. And yeah, thanks. Ezra out.